I just wanted to begin this video by saying that the league kind of feels pretty wide open, at least for this current tournament that's going on. It kind of feels like most teams can beat any other on any given day, at least like the decent teams, you know? Because if you look over in North America, only one team went undefeated in the qualifiers in week 1, that being the Atlanta Reign. That's pretty amazing. I can't really speak for APAC completely, just because it seems like it's a little bit more lopsided, but not every team has played yet as well, so I guess we'll kind of figure out that region more as we go. In the West though, oh man, we're in for one heck of a doozy. Things feel very, very disorganized right now, with the exception being the Atlanta Reign, who we're going to talk about a bit more later in the video. But just thinking about it logically, I mean, seriously, most teams feel like they're not necessarily better than a bunch of others. It really does depend on the day almost. Right from the beginning, on Friday afternoon, the crazy results started pouring in. We had the Paris Eternal taking down the Dallas Fuel, which is pretty unexpected, I would say. I know Paris have been getting better, but still, that's a pretty major accomplishment. But then, just a few days later, all of a sudden, the Boston Uprising can kind of just put them in their place. A statement win like that by Boston has to give them some needed confidence, because, honestly, I would say that most people these days have been hyping up the Paris Eternal more. They've been making greater strides. Like, I think Boston, they too have improved a lot since week 1 of the year, but Paris have just been achieving more. They've been a bit better. So getting a win here, it really does make you feel good. And I would say it gives you more of the respect that you rightfully deserve, because clearly you're not going anywhere, and that kind of continued against the Shock. Obviously, they didn't win that game, but they did put up a decent fight. Then you throw in the other teams that played, like the Reign, Justice, the Gladiators, and then of course the Outlaws, and boom, all of a sudden, you really don't know what to think of this region anymore. Aside from that one outlier, that being the Reign, who seemed to be pretty consistent overall, everybody else, I don't really know what to think completely right now. Who are they truly better than? Who are they worse than? I could not tell you. It is all over the place. This is the most confused I have been in a long time. A lot of sports fans like to pull out the, well, my team beat this team card, so they're probably better than this team over here. You can't really do that with the current state of North America and what we saw in the first week. When everybody trades, it just doesn't make any logical sense. Like, yeah, the Paris Eternal, they beat the Dallas Fuel, very impressive, but they also lost to the Boston Uprising. And when you look at Boston, yeah, they beat Paris, which is really cool, but they lost to the Shock, who also couldn't beat the Fuel. So who's better than who in that situation? Could the Eternal beat the Shock, or vice versa? What's the deal? Don't even get me started on the East either. Some of the decisions that the Dragons have been making have completely opened up this region. They were the big-time consistency factor in this region, aside from like the Dynasty, who always went 3-1 and everything, you know? Pretty much throughout this entire year, whenever you see a Shanghai game on the schedule, you kind of just assume it's a W for them. But now, we can't really do that. There's a good chance they may not even make it to the tournament this time, and that's going to open up a spot for some of these other interesting teams like the Fusion and NYXL, etc., etc. And of course, I don't think I need to tell any of you that this could be massive for playoff implications, whether you'd be qualifying for the play-ins, or maybe get that needed seed to get that first round bye to automatically qualify for the playoffs. APAC is pretty close right now. The Dynasty have that second spot, but they aren't untouchable by any means. The Hunters, the Fusion, the Spark, with a good tournament run, any of them could end up overpassing Seoul. Trust me when I say that any of those teams I just named definitely do want to get that second seed, because if you don't get it, then you have to go through the hell of potentially playing 2 of those other teams I named in a row just to make the playoffs and have a low seed in the tournament. And honestly, the same's going to apply for North America. Seeds 2 and 3 are anything but locked up right now. There are so many teams in the race to potentially get that first round bye. The Boston Uprising and Paris Eternal, it's not likely, but even they, with some luck, could end up getting it. But then, of course, you have teams that are a bit ahead of them. You got the Justice, the Gladiators, the Reign, the Outlaws, the Shock. There are a ton of teams in this race. And it's all because of 2 things. One, the meta drastically changing, especially in North America. I mean, it's completely different from what they've been playing before, essentially. But 2 is the Dragons and Fuel and some of the decisions they have been making as of late. We'll discuss the meta in a little. For now, I wanted to talk about the Fuel and the Dragons, because they kind of have to do with this whole playoff picture thing and how the standings are working currently. Eternal, NYXL, and Fusion fans may not like hearing this, but the Dragons and Fuel, it looks like they're probably tanking, at least for the time being. Again, I don't want to discredit your teams. Those are all major victories for them, and it's going to be huge in terms of the playoff race. But the Fuel and the Dragons really don't have anything to play for currently. This especially goes for the Shanghai Dragons, who have an absurd 18 league points, which is 7 more than the second highest, that being the Seoul Dynasty. Meanwhile, in the West, the Fuel, I mean, basically, they have a playoff seed locked up already. They don't necessarily have the number 1 seed yet, but one more win and they basically have it. With that said, there really isn't a point in exerting yourself fully if you're the Dallas Fuel or Shanghai Dragons. There's just no purpose in it. You don't really gain anything. All you really do is kind of exhaust your players further, which is not what you want to do. Now's the time to make them rest and not go all out so then they're fresh and ready for the playoffs. Don't waste your time trying to learn a new meta that isn't even going to stay past this month most likely. Instead, take some time to rest because you guys have definitely earned it, but also take the time to get to know yourselves a little more. Figure out some more weaknesses and strengths that your team have. If you're Dallas, you're probably looking towards the Wrecking Ball stuff. You're going to work on that. You're going to get better at the mirror match and synergy-wise with that composition. You're going to figure out some more counters possibly. Then if you're the Shanghai Dragons, you keep doing what you have been, but then continue to just improve your chemistry and patch up any holes that you think you may have. And I mean, seriously, do you really think that Dallas and Shanghai would be going all out with Repel, Who Are You, and or Develop in their lineups? No, of course not. That again goes to show you they really don't care too much about the present. They're thinking towards the future. And it is these types of behaviors that completely open up the league and who could make the playoffs, who could be making a tournament at the very least. Everything is so wide open now because these teams are not trying as much as they usually would. Usually for some of those higher tier teams or middle of the pack teams, when you see Dallas or Shanghai in the schedule, you kind of just assume, oh yeah, that's a loss, but not anymore with the current state they're in. Right now, you have a legitimate chance of beating them, which would be huge for you, as for some of these teams, they are arguably the biggest hurdle usually. And again, some of these teams, they're fighting for their playoff lives. Look at the NYXL, the Fusion. These teams desperately need wins. I would especially say for the New York Excelsior, because right now they are on the outside looking in, so they need all of the help they can get. They need to make some sort of tournament run, and beating Shanghai is a great first step. Whether any of us like it or not, the Dragons and Fuel are once again finding a different way to shape the playoff and or tournament picture. But of course, they're not the only factor in this, and that gets me back into the meta, because boy, oh boy, is it really, really insane. I thought that maybe it would just be the Wrecking Ball and the Tracer Sombra stuff, but some teams have gotten creative, and it looks like some teams even prefer playing the Orisa Diva, which I didn't expect just because I thought Sigma was the only thing that teams would be willing to play alongside Orisa, but apparently the Orisa Diva works fine, and we've seen it counter the Wrecking Ball stuff in some cases. Teams like the Atlanta Reign and Seoul Dynasty, they could thrive from this type of meta. If they can play decent enough on Wrecking Ball, then have a really good strong point on the Orisa, they're in good shape to potentially make a tournament run. But also at the same time, you could probably just do fine on one comp if you're really good at it, especially if it's the Wrecking Ball, because it goes without saying, if you can play that comp at a really good standard, then you're probably going to be one of the best teams in the league. We've seen it time and time again already, and it's still holding up to be true. Thinking about it just from an entertainment standpoint though, this meta sure has been wild. Again, the Wrecking Ball stuff, it's very chaotic and fast-paced, but then you throw in the Pharah, which has gotten even more playtime than I thought, and then even things like Soldier 76, and you're like, wow, this is a very interesting meta to watch. I thought we'd maybe see Pharah just on like Control, but some teams have really embraced her, and they found success as well, which is really cool. I really do like seeing some Pharah gameplay. It's very entertaining. I've always loved it. Even going back to Season 1, it's been one of the most enjoyable things for me, so you won't hear me complaining about seeing more Pharah. She's not a character we've seen a ton of the last couple of years. There are some crazy good Pharah players in this league. I mean, world class, and they finally get to show off their skills. It gets to go beyond like your Jinmus and your Prophets and your Fletus of the world. We get to see some of the insane NA teams do it as well, like Pelican. He's proven to be a menace on that hero. Nero, we all know he can be a good Pharah. Sparkle's nasty on it. Naga, he's been insane on Pharah as well. It's super fun. It's super cool to me how much investment the Pharah players get too, as they get Nano Boost a lot of the time. They have the Mercy Pocket on them as well, of course. The Diva Defense Matrix to cover them. There's so much being invested just into your Pharah player to watch them carry, which is super enjoyable to me. And along with that, we get Soldier 76. Like, the fact that some teams are using him kind of as like a countermeasure to the ball comps into Pharah, that's some wonderful stuff, because Soldier also just so happens to be a character we don't see a lot of these days. Some teams were choosing to really go anti-Pharah, like with your Orisa comp plus a Soldier 76 and then a McCree even for double hit scan. Some teams really did want to shut down the Pharah completely, like we saw Boston do it on day one against the Paris Eternal. Some teams really found success with it, which is great to me. I love to see Soldier doing well. Oh, as a quick side note, while we're on the topic of Soldier, am I the only one who noticed how much Soldier 76 gets relied on when hero pulls come into effect? We saw it happen in the June Joust. We're seeing it happen here in the Countdown Cup. Even at the beginning of hero pools last year in Season 3, when the first one went into effect, we had Soldier in the mix. He quite literally has become old reliable. Anytime there's a new hero ban, he just comes back from the dead somehow, every single time. It's like teams don't know what to do, and then they're like, I know, let's just lock in the legs, and then everybody does it, and you won't hear me complain. I love watching Soldier gameplay. It's like in the old days. Soldier and Pharah, those are the heroes that really got me into pro play during like 2017, early 2018. Watching those explosive Soldier and Pharah players dominate was a thing of beauty. And of course, as I've been saying, some teams could really take advantage of this meta change and pacing change, if you will. One of which has not played yet. That, of course, is the Chengdu Hunters, ladies and gentlemen. This is their time to shine. The meta is exactly the same, essentially. There's Orisa involved, but with how good they are at Wrecking Ball, it really won't even matter too much, I feel like. They quite literally just made it to a finals of a tournament with this specific composition. Everything is the same. They have their Wrecking Ball, they have their Zarya and D.Va, they've got Leave on the Tracer, they have Pharah, Sombra. They're good. They've got Yveltal playing Brig and Mercy at a crazy rate, then Monk popping off on the Zenyatta. This is just the most ideal meta possible for the Chengdu Hunters. If the Chengdu Hunters suck or they disappoint in this meta and this stage, I would be absurdly disappointed. This is their time to shine. If they mess this up, that is very sad. This is the most perfect opportunity I've ever seen for them to get back into this race and potentially overtake the Dynasty for second place. I would not want to be a team facing Chengdu this stage because they could be out for blood. It could be a very scary thing to deal with. Anyway, let's talk a bit more about some of these other teams and what I noticed during the first week. The first team on my list is the Washington Justice because man, oh man, did they let me and many others down yet again. This seemed like the perfect time for them to finally get off to a hot start in a tournament in their first week, but no. Yet again, we were all proven wrong for any of you Justice enthusiasts out there or optimists like myself. I mean, everything just seemed so perfect on paper. They were already using the Wrecking Ball Tracer Sombra stuff. They were kind of ahead of the loop, if you will, at least in North America. They're one of the only teams playing it at the time. They were using it during the Summer Showdown, and they looked pretty decent on it, I would say. It seemed like it just played up to a lot of their comfort picks, if you will, because Tracer, Decay, that's one of his best heroes. Then Assassin, while he has been inconsistent this year, he has been pretty decent on the Sombra overall, I would say. Like, seriously, the Justice have been playing that DPS combo since the beginning of this season, essentially. It is their ultimate comfort pick, and yet it really did not look like it. I wouldn't blame Decay or anything, and I don't really like blaming individual players that much these days, especially when the team isn't that bad, but Assassin, let's just call it how it is, he did not have a good weekend at all. He just did not come to play. It was really brutal in the Outlaws game when he whiffed that EMP. He might have even whiffed multiple EMPs on the weekend. I don't remember exactly, but that one against Houston definitely stands out to me. That was rough. And Happy, he really didn't have to do much to outplay him, which is sad because Happy, he's not super known for his Sombra, I feel like. Yeah, he can play it, but that's not his specialty. He specializes in snipers and McCree, the big-time hit scan roles. Meanwhile, Assassin, he kind of does specialize in Sombra. That's kind of what he's been known for this year. Assassin just kept making mistakes after mistake, so it was very, very easy for Happy to capitalize and get more value off of his hacks and his EMPs and just making smarter decisions. What's sad is things didn't really get any better as we move on to the whole Gladiators game. There were mistakes in that one as well. Maybe he played a tiny bit better, but you could barely tell, especially when you think about the whole Rialto thing and how he fell off the map. That was kind of inexcusable and really sad to see. Believe me though, it is nowhere near just Assassin's fault. A lot of the Justice did not come to play. Overall, I would say their synergy looked very off. It was very inconsistent. They seemed very split at times and super indecisive. I mean, it was sad. The team that appeared to be turning it around at the end of the Summer Showdown was nowhere to be found during this weekend. Just when I thought they were finally starting to be more decisive and fast-paced, they took like 5 steps backwards. It was unbelievable. Who is calling the shots? I really do want to know because I don't really see anybody calling the shots on that team at times. They aren't really prioritizing targets enough and they're just letting teams walk in and do whatever the heck they want with them. And it's super disappointing to see them rely on this playstyle because we all know what they're capable of. They're not playing anywhere near their ceiling, which we have seen a couple of times throughout this year. When they hit that peak, they can beat almost anybody in the league, but they just can't be there consistently for whatever the heck the reason, whether it's the coaching or the players not being the brightest, some sort of combination. They just can't figure it out. It's very disappointing. Again, Assassin, he's been having a really tough rookie year at times, I feel like. Very inconsistent, has extreme ups and downs like a crazy roller coaster. Their support line hasn't been the greatest, and they're trying to put Tuba in their main support at times. It's a disaster. And that really sucks because a team with Mag, Fury, and Decay, when you look at it on paper, you'd assume they're going to be insane, but they're just not. As we've learned time and time again throughout history, sometimes big names are not enough. We saw it with like the 2018 Dynasty, the 2018 Fuel, etc. Some of these big name teams just can't get it done. I know this team can be way better, and they keep betraying my trust. Like every single time I think they're about to turn the corner, they just stop right in their tracks and they let teams get ahead of them again. They got 3-0 twice. It's just like during the beginning of the June Joust. The same thing is playing out. They are letting golden opportunities go to waste. Because the Gladiators and the Outlaws are really close to them in the standings, beating either of them would help out a ton in trying to climb. There's still a chance for them to get top 3, but they basically just ruined it by going 0-2 this weekend and looking completely defeated. This team can still make the knockouts no problem and everything, but how they're going to do and if they'll even make the playoffs, I don't know, man. Doesn't look too good right now. They always need time to warm up, and if that's the case, they are not going to last in a single elimination playoff bracket, you know? That's just not going to be a thing that happens. You can't afford to study all this time and take a beating in your first week just to finally come back and play better. That's not going to help you in a playoff situation where you only get one chance. This team is just so incredibly messy. Their over-reliance on a rookie who's inconsistent has really been an issue for them. Their support line, again, hasn't been that great. I think that Mag, Fury, and Decay have been holding their own, but those three on their own just aren't enough to get this team where they need to be. And unless things change really fast, they're going to be screwed heading into the playoffs. Okay, that's enough about the negativity. Let's move on to a more positive beacon in this video. How about the Atlanta Reign? They have really come to play yet again. Super impressive stuff. They keep giving me more and more reasons to regret placing them so low in my preseason power rankings and doubting them for like the first half of the season for that matter. But of course, I'm not the only one. Even some of the biggest Atlanta optimists out there probably did not see them being this amazing. What a difference a year can make, plus some new additions to your team. Unter, the former coach of the Valiant, clearly he's been making his mark, and then Kai, he's been a huge addition to this team. Then there's the rookie Pelican. He has been absolutely insane, probably on pace to win Rookie of the Year right now in most people's eyes. Just absolutely amazing stuff from a team I did not see coming from a mile away. Despite this team still being led by Sephi in a way, I suppose, they have found a way to adapt, something they have been lacking for over a year. They found it. They figured it out. Something clicked. Maybe it's the talent, maybe it's a slight addition to their coaching with Unter. Whatever it is, they have it down. Newly implemented hero pools and the meta changing from stage to stage really hasn't affected them all that much. Their confidence has pushed through all of that. They're not afraid of anything right now, which is a good trait that you want to see in a team that's competing for a title. This confidence has kind of gone all around to all of their players too. Gator and Hawk, Kai, Edison, and Pelican, they've been leading the way. They've been such an insane trio. They've really led by example with their pop-off performances. Then Masa, he's improved a ton. I think that his Brigitte's leaps and bounds better compared to last year. Then Iris, he's come a long way. He's become one of the best flex supports in the league, maybe even the best Baptiste for some people. This Reign team is no joke. With the way they're playing right now, they seriously might end up clinching a top 3 spot in the North American standings, which I actually do think they will do by the time it's all said and done. Because with the way they played in that first week, I don't know if anybody's going to be stopping them in this region. They killed, well, I shouldn't say killed because they did have a close game with the Gladiators, but they beat 2 really respectable teams from this region who are around their level. They came out clutch against the Gladiators, and then they crushed the Outlaws. I mean, that game wasn't even that close. Super impressive stuff from, like, Pelican in particular, because he bullied Dante. I believe Sideshow was saying that at one point. He was bullying Dante on Tracer, which is absurd. He's bullying Dante, one of the better Tracers in the league. That's just, oh man, how do you do that? Pelican wasn't exactly known for his Tracer, I feel like, but here he is. He was dominating on Pharah, Tracer, it didn't really matter. Pelican truly has propelled himself into superstar status, which is very unfair for a lot of other teams in the league when considering that Kai is already at that level himself. So the Rangers have this super elite DPS line. Most of us knew they would be really strong and they'd be the best part of their team coming into this season, but in my opinion, they have blown away expectations. Between the elite talent, the clutch factor, and the versatility, the Reign are one of the teams to beat. They could end up winning the entire Countdown Cup, especially when you consider that the Dallas Fuel and the Shanghai Dragons likely won't be competing with them since they're not trying as hard. The only thing that's unfortunate about being the Reign in this situation is they don't have a playoff spot locked up yet technically, so they have to keep their foot on the gas. They can't afford to relax, which really sucks when you consider how hard they've been trying these last couple of stages. To be completely safe, they might have to go to Hawaii yet again, and that could be very exhausting on their end when you consider they've already gone there 2 times in a row. The last thing you want to see if you're a Reign fan is your team burning themselves out before they get to the games that even matter. Who knows though, maybe this won't affect the Reign. Perhaps they'll play better under the stress. We've seen teams from a bunch of different sports in the past do better under pressure, and being one of those lower seeds who has to do more to win. If this is how the Reign thrive, then all the power to them. Keep running that marathon. But still, burnout is something you have to think about in this situation, something you should be maybe a little concerned about if you're a Reign fan. Nothing that would, warrant you thinking your team would be eliminated in like the first round of the playoffs, let's say, but still, it's something to think about because it could hurt you. The mental aspect of sports is very real. Fatigue can set in out of nowhere and can strike like you didn't even see it coming. As someone who would like to see the Reign go far, I really hope that this does not affect them. I love Kai, I love Hunter, they're former Valiant boys. I want nothing but the best for them, so hopefully the Reign can get through this. But of course, since we don't know what's going to happen, all we can really do is look forward to the ride and watch them very carefully. Don't worry, APAC fans, I didn't forget about you. Let's move on from the Reign and NA and talk a bit about this region now. So the big team I wanted to discuss is the Philly Fusion, because they're the talk of the town right now. Now that they're finding success again, all of the recurring storylines are back in effect. Are the Fusion going on another one of those classic hot streaks of theirs? Are they going to burn out of nowhere and disappoint the fans again? Are these first couple of wins just a fluke? The whole 9 yards. It's all coming out again. I doubt I need to point out the obvious here, but you have to be very careful with a team like Philly. You just never know what is going to happen with them. Yeah, it most likely feels like they're going down a road that will lead to failure and pain, but there's always this slight hint of optimism just because they have the talent to go far. And right now they're winning, so there's reason to maybe feel good, right? Maybe, I guess, but I'm not putting too much stock into how well they did in that first week, at least not yet. I'd like to see them play a bit more before I judge for certain if they're back or not. You gotta remember who they played. Yeah, they beat Shanghai, that's awesome. The fact that they can get a win off of them is absolutely massive for their playoff hopes. But again, the Dragons clearly weren't giving it all they had by their lineup decisions, if you will. So I don't count that win all that much. It's still impressive, I guess, but not as impressive as it could be if they played like a full strength Shanghai, let's say. Then they also beat the Spark, who are kind of struggling themselves right now because of coaching and whatnot. The good news though is the players look really happy right now, and that's great because Philly are extremely momentum based. After that Shanghai game in particular, those Philly players looked so excited, and that could be a dangerous thing for the rest of this region. Carpe and Alarm definitely looked like their old selves out there. I thought Hoppa even played relatively well. Funny Astro looks more comfortable with the team. Shockwave is now there. It seems like they're going to be slowly integrating him. Life seems somewhat good if you're Philly, but right now, the key is to see if that can last. Can they play well again in their next week of games, where they play the NYXL and the Seoul Dynasty? That will be the key in deciding if they're back or not. If they can at least play well in both of those games and be competitive, then that would be a good sign. And if they can win one, that would be even better. They got to play well in these next 2 games to show us that how they performed during week 16 was not some sort of fluke. Again, I must reiterate that I think 1 or 2 big wins is all it really takes to get this team going and flip their metaphorical switch, if you will, but it also works the exact opposite way since they're so momentum based. If they don't play well or they have 2 choking losses, then yeah, things are going to be looking real grim for them heading into the playoffs, and I would not like their chances of going far. Philly are a major team to watch because I think a bunch of people as of late have been writing them off, kind of including myself, but they could easily get back into this thing and be a real threat if things do end up going their way. That's about all I have to say about Philly and the major teams I wanted to talk about in this video, but I did want to quickly highlight over some honorable mentions and go over some brief thoughts on them. Starting with the Dynasty, they again showed us, yeah, they're here to be consistent for the entire season. We don't know if that's going to translate into a tournament or playoffs just yet, but during regular season play, they look really solid. Gesture has been reincorporated into the lineup. They seem very happy with him. Everything seems all right. Tuyu's been popping off like crazy. He's looking like one of the better divas in the league with how many pulse bombs he's eating. The Dynasty seem like they're in a good spot, but we still kind of need to see them take that next step now. Transitioning back into North America, I thought that the Paris Eternal again showed good potential. Dallas weren't at full strength, but they still did beat the Fuel in a meta that's pretty good for them. They showed off some good flexibility with Don on the Wrecking Ball, with Nog on the the Pharah. He looked fantastic. Oniga was as good as ever. Khan was as good as ever. I thought Dridro played extremely well during the weekend. It was a pretty positive performance. They showed some inconsistencies against Boston and everything, but still, they did show us they have the potential to beat a lot of good teams in this region. Come playoff time, they could be very scary if it's a meta that favors them. They seem like a very bright group of individuals. Their coaching is good. Their players are improving at a rapid rate. Anything is possible with those guys. So if I'm a team in the play-ins, I really don't want to have to go up against them. They could end up upsetting you and somehow making it to the playoffs. It maybe seems a little unlikely, but it definitely is a possibility. Speaking of teams heading towards that trajectory, the Boston Uprising, they're in a pretty similar state. They also showed us you have to take them seriously or you're going to suffer the hard way like the Paris Eternal did, for example. They seem like they're pretty happy in this meta themselves. They can run the Pharah, they can run the Soldier. There's a lot of different options for them. I'm37 has been playing very well as of late. Myungbong, he's killing it on the Zenyatta. This Boston team could be scary to deal with in the playoffs as well, and you never know. Maybe they could do some damage in this tournament too. The final team I wanted to briefly go over is the Houston Outlaws because I don't understand them one bit. Out of all teams, I think their power level might be the hardest to judge because they're like smack dab right in the middle between like really amazing status and just being a good team. They're so weird. Maybe the Justice win really didn't mean that much because clearly they are struggling right now. The Justice didn't play well in the Gladiators game either, so perhaps that was a gimme game and the Outlaws really didn't show us much at all. They just took advantage of a team making a lot of mistakes. Because as we saw when they did play a team that you consider for real, they kind of got crushed. As mentioned earlier, they were getting bullied. Nobody was having a good time. Dante was getting wrecked by Pelican on a role he should be favored on. Then you have Janggu who was getting hard targeted basically the whole game. The Atlanta Reign had their number. The Atlanta Reign, as I've been talking about, are one of the teams to beat right now. So if the Houston Outlaws can't even make a dent in them, then yeah, I think it's safe to say the Outlaws still definitely have some work to do. And that is why, my friends, the rest of this tournament is absolutely crucial if you're the Houston Outlaws. You gotta show us something. You can't just sit there and have the same results happen again. That's not going to cut it. They have to do some damage in this tournament. Win the rest of your games during the regular season, then actually get through the knockouts and make it to Hawaii. Beat some good teams. Make them sweat. Show us something. They gotta show us improvement this time. If they give us the same results again, then what reason will there ever be to think of them as a true threat come playoff time? They've got to win when it matters, and it has to start now. For the sake of the confidence of this team, I think it is crucial that they come through and actually do some damage in these playoffs. If they're known as that team that's good but never does anything with their talent, it is really going to hurt their mental come playoff time potentially. It's now or never, Outlaws. Show us what you've got and go on a late season surge. Otherwise, your season may be coming to an end a lot earlier than all of your fans would like it to. And that's just about going to wrap up this episode of my little rambling series, if you will. Sorry for going on and on. There was a lot on my mind, and I felt like if I did a script, I wouldn't be able to get everything that I wanted to talk about in this video, so we just went with it. We rolled with it. If you enjoyed it and you want more of these types of videos, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you're new, and make sure to let me know what you think of the weekend down in the comment section, because I really am curious to see how you guys think, if you have a similar thought process to me, or if you don't really think anything of these chaotic moments. And as always, thank you all so much for watching this video. I appreciate your support so much, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.